Hi, everybody. Welcome to season 1, episode 5 of the Teach for Justice podcast. The theme of today's podcast is gendered pronouns and why they're important, as well as where does that fit in this larger conversation about student identity and what lengths, I'm trying to think about what lengths teachers should go to respect the student's identity, especially as a reaction to recent developments in people talking about identity, especially students themselves talking about their identity and how they want to be referred to and how they want their friends to be referred to also. And so with me, I have Hang Tran, who is a local teacher and colleague. And I just want to welcome you. Thank you for coming on and helping me understand better and be better for my students, for our students. But if you could take a second and explain to everybody, what your teaching background and your commitment to this issue is and things like that.
Okay, so thank you, Alfie, for just having me on. It's an honor, and I think one of the best things about this journey of yours is the asking questions and seeking answers that may not have like a right or a wrong or a correct, incorrect, and those types of things. It's just what's working for our people and our students. I grew up in a very gendered culture. My Vietnamese culture is a very gendered culture. And even with my parents, but at a very young age, I'd known that I'm not, I don't know, I wasn't like, or I felt like an outsider. And I think that that's where my journey into seeking identity and seeking my gender identity, but also just making sure that those around me felt and feel safe, and as well as, feel okay to be themselves. So I went to school for 100 years, it feels like,
Right.
before I, got out of school in 2015, started working here at Bolsa. Oh, am I supposed to say the school? You could probably bleep that out if
Right.
needed.
Right.
Started working here at our local school.
In Southern California.
In Southern California, in a predominantly Asian and Latinx community. So just go beep at that part.
Right.
But yeah, so I started working here, and I see a lot of our students struggling like I did, and I somewhat do when it comes to identity and expressing yourself, but expressing yourself in a way that is authentic and true to yourself too, but not to anyone else. So long story longer, here I am. And over the last year, I do teach ELA. I do not teach history. As some of you listeners may know, that Alfredo is a social science teacher. I'm English, liberal arts. So English and ELD, which stands for English Language Development. And for those of you who aren't familiar with English language development, oftentimes it was called ESL, English as a second language.
Right.
However, it's the term now is English language development, because some of our kids are coming in with multiple languages and not just the second language, being English. And so that's where I'm at. My passion is there as well. And I love English for the language and for how it's so malleable. So yeah, I don't know.
Right. And so for our listeners, I felt like you were an excellent person to work with me on this. I was, of course, trying to find a good reason to have you on, because when I think of you, I forget who, I was listening to another podcast and they were talking about how to make things manageable at your school and to avoid burnout, you need a champion. a colleague who's a champion of what you're doing and what you're trying to do, and I consider you a champion of mine, and keeping me going, and I seek to be a champion of what you are doing, and it's because we're able to talk about this comfortably, and I
Mhm.
can be vulnerable about it, because some of this is uncomfortable for me, but I'm
Yeah.
trying, and part of me trying is asking questions, and I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who want to know more about this pronoun stuff. I mean, some of our colleagues have asked me, what is it about? I was recently at a event with adults, and a family friend said, I don't understand this whole thing, which is actually what spawned this conversation of me seeking you out and saying, hey, you willing to come talk about this? And I'm going to send a copy of this podcast, of course, to her and say, well, I hope this helps, right? You were asking me, what's it all about and why is it important? I've learned a bit more. I did not feel equipped to talk about it at the time. And so I want to set kind of the stage for where I am currently with this and why I'm seeking to do better. Where I am, and I think I know several people in this boat. If I am on a Zoom at a professional development or a class I'm taking or any kind of meeting, and other people are putting their pronouns in parentheses on their Zoom, I will go ahead and do that. And if they aren't, I will be hesitant to be the first to do it. I'm not proud of that. I'm not proud of being in this space, but this is where I am. And my family friend who said, I don't get it, and thought that I would have some enlightened answer because I'm a teacher, and she understands me to be somebody who is, I've been on the margins growing up, that I'd be more into it, and I felt like, yeah, you know what, I at least want to understand why I am or aren't more into it, and so that's where I am with it. And lately, students I've been good about saying he or she, right? And we'll get to this article that you sent to me here in a second, but I've been good about that as a history teacher, saying he or she. Lately, more and more students will, raise their hand or just blurt out, or they, you know. Lately, that especially this year, that's happened more and more. And I say, you're absolutely right, or they. And I think getting a little consistency on that might be a good thing. And so that's where I'm at with that. And so I want to understand better the why behind it all.
So first off, I just want to address that. I mean, we all, I don't want to say like slip up. I often accidentally misgender somebody, or I will, if they use the terms they, them, I would sometimes say like he or she regarding them. So first, I want to just say that I know that a lot of people, part of the LGBT community, will agree that if you are not doing it out of malice, if you're not misgendering out somebody out of malice, then it is okay. I don't want to ever stop the conversation just because so I have a child, and I'm going to use the terms they, them to refer to my child. I've been using they, them to refer to my child for since their conception, basically.
Mhm.
And so when people I don't want to even say misgender, because Juniper is so young that they are not yet able to express to me what their gender is. Um, I use they, them to talk to them. And when people say, oh, he is like this, oh, he's so cute, or she is like this, she is so cute, I know that it's not coming from malice,
Right.
right? And if it's not coming from malice and you're seeking to learn, then it is okay to ask questions, and it's okay to say like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean that. How should I refer to you? Or what are your pronouns? Or what are your words? And so there are many people who would agree with me and say like, it's not just because you say she by accident, it doesn't mean like, oh my God, you're not a part of it, you're not an ally, or something like that.
So
So
at this point, I can imagine someone listening might say or be fixated on, okay, but what gender are they? Right. And do you find that that there's the tension in them to want to know for some reason in their brain or upbringing or conditioning that they have to know? Do you find what is your reaction to that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay,
No,
you
I
say they
do.
them, but quote unquote, what are they?
I
Right?
do. And I don't want to be blunt and say
No,
this,
go ahead.
but I don't need to explain my child's
Mhm.
genitalia to you.
Right, right.
Like that's really what it is. Like when, you know, and so when people ask that question, it's not, I know that they're just trying to figure out like how should I treat this child, or how should I refer to this child in a binary world, in a she, he world only. So I understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, it's okay. I like gender identity is not, it's not something that is fixed just because you were born with a certain set of genitalia. But that is of course my own, and I understand how people are very there are some individuals who find that to be a very radical thing
Mhm.
now, right? Even now, like that's a radical idea. But
You know, uh, on the other hand, you know, I'm Chicano. I grew up in Los Angeles. It's very, very gendered and all that. But I've been coaching for 30 years, including youth coaching.
mhm,
And, you know, scientifically at ages 5 and 6, whether it's soccer or basketball or t-ball, you know, the
yeah,
gender doesn't matter, right? Their gender doesn't matter. So on the athletic field, I've gotten very used to they're just players. They're just kids. There's literally no relevant reason to pay any attention to their genitalia because at that age, at that young age, it plays no role in
yeah,
deciding anything. And so I think for coaches and parents, you know, I have 2 kids and have coached a ton, including t-ball and 4 and 5 year old, you know, soccer and things like that. It's you know, it's just they're just kids. They're just athletes on the team, and no one, it's
yeah,
not relevant.
exactly. And I can agree there. I think it's also, I think that it's not something where we need to say, oh well, this individual is a he, so he needs to play with only he's, or
Right.
something like that. Like it's not relevant to them, it's not important. And so that's why using, I think they them as referring to individuals, um until they're able to tell us that, how they feel in the society, how where they rest in the spectrum, or where they rest, you know um in this gender world. So it's okay to just use they them. And so that's where I'm coming from. I'm being an English teacher. I know many of my English peers from all over, um, several different schools, districts, and having struggle with they them and how to teach it and how to talk about it. But I just wanted to talk about it from a grammar perspective.
So
um,
is it grammatically correct to
you can
use
use,
they them in English? I'm a history teacher, but in
so the article that I sent you, and if we're going to talk about language, language is ever fluid. That's the thing. Like language changes to fit the individuals. Have you ever Googled anything? Have you ever
well,
Googled
not
anything?
only have I Googled, but the article you
Exactly. So
sent
you
me.
just used it as a verb, but Google is technically a noun. So not to trip you up, but
No, that's
language is
okay.
changing, right?
Yeah.
Language, that's what I was trying to say. Like if you've ever Googled something, or if you, I will Marie Kondo this, like making those allusions, those references, that's language that is changing, to fit the purpose of its user. And so, yes, I would argue that they, them is grammatically correct. And we've been using it forever, to each their own,
And
right?
so on that note, right, for grammar, for example, the article you sent me is from a website called the Purdue OWL. And OWL, for those of you who don't know, OWL is an acronym for Online Writing Lab. And I teach AP US history as well as a writing class, a seminar writing class to high school students. And Purdue OWL, the Online Writing Lab, was one of the original online sources for MLA format, Chicago format, basically because of that exact issue you just brought up, which was it changes. The rules change for being grammatically correct. And rather than buying every year the new edition of the style manual, you could get it online. They were one of the first to embrace that tech piece. And they are sort of the standard, and they have set the expectation that there will be updates and modifications every year to what isn't acceptable. And so according to Purdue OWL, right? It's a great article called Gendered Pronouns and Singular They, for those people that want to look it up. And it's broken into 4 really good parts that I think are going to help address people's concerns. They certainly were very enlightening to me because I am not fully versed on this, but I do feel change from it. And I'm grateful that you send it to me. But yeah, so it allows, it talks a little bit about the history where the first start was getting away from the default always being male, right? And there was a big trend to get rid of the default always being male and saying he, and then adding or she. And then now this concept of gender neutral being acceptable, right? And I go back to this phrase, and I don't know how often you use it, but the phrase is all communication is based on agreement, right? And so I think the agreements in style have been top down, elite academia down. And I think we're trying to get some people on their own to say, well, you know what, regardless of what elite academia says, I prefer to be referred to in this way. Elite academia's language towards me and people like me doesn't feel good, or doesn't include me. And I'd like to feel included while I'm learning. And so and they talk about how Chicago APA format, and more, it's more and more being accepted academically to use they, because to not default to he or she.
Yeah, and I know a lot of my academic peers would be reliant on, well, what does MLA say? What does Purdue OWL say? Because that is still our societal marker, basically. And I love the fact that these articles speaking about the singular they are coming out through all APA, as you mentioned earlier, MLA, as well as Chicago style, are all addressing the singular they. And inside the classroom, I've encountered both successes and challenges when teaching the singular they to ELD students, so English language learners, right? And I actually had a colleague of ours ask me, because I refer to Juniper as they, them, they asked me, do I say they is or do I say they are? Because we had always been taught that is singular while are is for plural. However, that's not the case. Think about the word you. If you say you are my friend versus you are my friends, it's same. You can be both singular or plural in the context of the sentence.
I did not think of it that way, but you're right.
Much like the word all, right? There's a lot of words in our languages, sorry, I do speak 2 languages, so that's why I say languages, but in our language that has the singular or plural based on the context of the sentence. Words like all the piece of cake is, or all the piece of cakes are, right? Depending on the context of what it is, or some. So when we think about that, many of us are, no, that one, cut that out. No, just kidding. But yeah, there's just so many that basically fit both roles. And I think they, unless there is a creation of a new pronoun, which I'm not too familiar with yet, but if there is a creation of a new pronoun to fit both, because I know other societies do have a gender neutral pronoun separate from a plural pronoun. So unless English creates that within the next few years, I can see they fitting the role of both singular, gender neutral, and non-binary, all of that.
The article asks another important question, which I think in these times has to be asked. So I really appreciate it. One of the subheadings is this political? Right. And so according to this article, conversations around, I'm quoting here, conversations around gender and sexuality have always been political. They cite Dr. John D'Amelio from University of Illinois at Chicago, having spent numerous publications talking about discussions of gender and sexuality. But these practices are being recognized, including the honorific MX, which is a title where people just specifically, deliberately, you're preferring not to identify as either, which, you know, so is it political? Sure, but it always has been. It's not politically, it's not new to the political conversation. And so, you know, I mean, gosh, women's rights have been political. As a history teacher, I can tell you women's rights have been political for a long time. And so, but now I think it's just broadening to not just a male-female thing. It's broadening to be aware of more, not just gender neutral, but other. And there's a list here, including like non-conforming and things like that, which we'll get to in a second. The other thing I love about this article, and I'm grateful for, is, and this is, I think, the pushback that I've been hearing most, which is it's a fad or it's a trend, or this is temporary and I'm just going to do what I do and ride it out, quote unquote, ride it out. But and I love this as a historian, according to the article here, the Oxford English Dictionary's first citation of gender neutral was they at about 1375, the year 1375. The phrase "they" to be gender neutral appears in 1382 in John Wycliffe's translation of the Bible. Okay, and then Shakespeare also uses it in Much Ado About Nothing. And so, while recently a different concept of gender has brought this to the forefront, with gender neutral and non-binary, it still is not a new trend. That we're going back centuries here. So this is not invented by you know, whoever some people might accuse of inventing something like this. So, you know, for those of you trying to or considering using those as obstacles to accepting this, open, you know, I would really encourage you to open up your mind up, and partly because if you're not a teacher, I just have seen several students over the last couple of years really make the request more and more to keep in mind. They're not angry about it. They're saying, hey, can you keep in mind, open it up, that maybe using they and things like that. And so I appreciate that.
I also, yes, I noticed even with the students who are coming from, you know, outside of the United States, they're more open to talking about gender. They're more open when it comes to accepting that there are, you know, differences even within like a gender or whatever. There's differences among all of us. And so it's just fascinating for me to see, as an individual who speaks with a lot of immigrant children, how, you know, it may not be talked about as much in Vietnam or in Guatemala, but they're more accepting when they come here, and they're more willing to you know, try on this, you know, this new language, like talk of ours, right? So,
you know what I feel kind of odd about, because now we're talking about them coming here, but for us here is Southern California. And so one thing I've been struggling with lately, because it's a very Southern California thing, is
Oh yeah.
referring to yes, is referring to people as dude. Okay, so and so I've grown up with it. I've said dude for a variety of reasons in a variety of occasions, and I still do. Is that something I should feel like I should really work hard to eliminate from my vocabulary because I'm being offensive? Uh,
I don't think so. I
I've
think
called you
honestly,
dude before.
yeah, dude, like, even I just said it right there.
Right.
It's such a Californian slang. And again, you're not going back to what I said earlier, it's not coming from a place of malice. You're
No,
not,
I'm not, yeah, no.
yeah, you're not saying like you're a dude. You're
But
just
I've
saying,
walked away going, oh, I just called her dude. I
no,
feel
no, I say man, I say dude. Everyone is either like a girlfriend or a son. Like
Mhm.
I've called like all of I call my children, all of my students. I'm like, son, you need to stop. Like, stop.
Right.
And they're like, what? But I'm a girl. I was like, son, no.
Right.
But like in a joking way, of course, not to gender the student or anything, but it's, or I'll call them girlfriend and they're like, Mrs. Tran. I'm like, anybody could be a girlfriend. And
Yeah.
so I think that is language itself. That's the fun part of it. It's the fun, to be able to joke with each other, but not to the point where it's at the expense of another individual, right?
Right.
Like,
And their identity. And we just
and they're
really
like,
feel like this is an important part of this.
yeah.
And now I have you as an accountability person. I mean, I remember recently I made a comment about there was a school dance and I made a comment and I said, well, you shouldn't get that. Please tell me you're not getting all riled up over I think I was talking about a girl and I said, please tell me you're not getting distracted and you're lacking focus because you're distracted by a boy. And you said, or a girl, or both, or neither. And having an accountability person helps me stay on track. And we talked about a colleague, which will remain nameless right now, who checked me when I referred to a couple of outstanding, very bright, very intelligent female colleagues as
Oh,
chicks. And he just looked at me with the side eye, chicks. So, no, you're right. And so, but what advice would you have for somebody who's maybe in a school in a part of the country or in a part of California where there aren't too many people on staff that are there to keep them accountable about their language and being encouraging like you are for me?
I think that is a very difficult question because I think it also comes down to the individual who is, like when you said chick and the person checked you, you were like, oh, yes. But if there's that initial backlash and saying like, oh yeah, whatever, like, so what if I said that? I can understand how someone could be discouraged to speak up.
Mhm.
But I think it is also important to recognize those that are like-minded, but it is good to also see outside to keep yourself calibrated, right? To see like, okay, what are the conversations being had? And then remaining quiet at that moment does not mean that you are not an ally. Maybe you're just, waiting for the right time. And so going back to your thing, accountability starts with the self, but then having those individuals who are around you to keep you accountable as well is sometimes like really hard to find. And I really don't know the answer to
That's
that.
fair. That's
For those
fine.
that, for those that live, and this is where I am in my own little bubble because I have so many people at our school that can keep me accountable and keep me like fresh and spry and to make sure that I'm not just lost in my own sort of like reality. But
Including
not
your work wife.
including my work wife. Yeah, my work wife.
So,
My students, my esposa, learning Spanish. That is not one of the two languages I speak, by the way, if you couldn't tell but my esposa. And that was really interesting. The kids, because esposa means spouse, but that's like marriage spouse,
Right.
not work wife. And so the kids from my ELD basics class, when I called my work wife my esposa, they're like, esposa, like together? They
Right.
weren't sure where, and so like, you know what? And she and I are fine with that. We're like, whatever, like
Right.
she's my work wife.
And
I have a work husband.
for the right, and you are married to a man.
I am married to a man.
And but for our just for the audience here, I came to school with my kids, maybe a year ago, and we ran into you, and it's like, hey, this is my friend, blah blah blah, and you had asked, have you seen my wife? Have you seen my work wife? And I said, oh no. And I knew who you were talking about. And I said, oh, haven't seen her yet, but we just got here. And you walked away, and one of my kids whispered very politely, Daddy, is she lesbian? And I remember pausing and saying, well, why are you asking? What? And I thought it was because of your hair. It was very colorful that day. It was I forget what it was, a very deep, very obvious color. And I thought that's what the reason. I just wanted to hear him say it. And
I guess it's because you're so used to the word work wife that you
yes,
didn't even
right,
have
exactly. That
yeah.
I missed that. And he said, well, she said wife. And I was like, oh, I totally missed that. I said, no, it's just a term, buddy. It's a work wife. It's just a term some people use. But it did get me to thinking. Oh, and for the record too, and you know this, he said, not that it's a big deal.
I know.
I just want to know. I
Your
just
kids.
wondering. And it was
Adorable.
great. But it did get me thinking, like, hypothetically, if we had a male teacher come in and add to it, if it were a gay male teacher with a husband, because there's layers there. You're married and you have using the term work wife. I've never used the term work wife or work husband for that matter. How does your husband feel about that term?
My actual husband,
Yeah,
or
your actual husband. Oh, your actual husband.
so he doesn't mind or anything like that. I guess it's because for us, he already, like, it's no big deal, I guess, because I'm only, and this is quoting my work husband because I have a work husband too, and I have several work wives.
Yeah, okay.
I'm only polygamous when it comes to
right. Work,
right? And so and
fair.
and that's it, because I think I'm only polygamous when it comes to work. I'm monogamous when it comes to my spouse. But yeah, it's not something that, I think it's because he's already, I guess the conversation I want to go back to is the conversation he and I had when it came to talking about our child and and why we would use the pronoun they. And it is very difficult for a lot of people because that's one of the first questions people ask, like, are they a boy or a girl?
Yeah, right.
Like,
They're so conditioned to what difference does it make, especially at that age, right?
Yeah.
And for the record, how old is Juniper right now?
Juniper is turning 2 in 10 days.
Right.
So in 10 days from the recording of this, not probably 10 days from
right. Yeah, it might take a second to.
Yeah. But
sorry, people.
No.
Sorry, 9 people that are rushing to hear the next episode.
you 10
all
out
9
there.
of you, yeah.
We love you. But no, it's the they're turning 2, and it's very fascinating to see them as a child, in the sense of like trying on both roles. Like, they'll see me do something and they'll mimic it too, or they'll see my husband do something and they'll mimic what he's doing. And so it's like, you know what? It's cool. You get, you know, really literally the world is your oyster. Like, you get to decide like what you want to be and how you want to be treated. And we were over this weekend, you know, lots of people were saying, oh, she's so cute, she's so cute. And then there were other people saying, oh my God, he's so cute, he's so cute. And we were just like, yeah, thank you. Like, we wouldn't.
Either way, it's all good.
Either way. And we've had like children.
It doesn't bother you that they pick one or the other?
No, because I think it's because,
or assume one or the other.
Yeah, it's safe. It's safe. Yeah, I'm glad that you say assume one. It's not that they're picking, it's, it's just safe and for them at this moment, but maybe in the future it might be safer to say like, oh, they're so cute, because within my family with my siblings, we all, oh, they're so cute, and with among our friends, they always call Juniper by they, and it's like, to be honest, awkward at first, but very much easy the more you practice it.
So this leads me to, and it's out there, so we're going to talk about it. We have this Florida bill, right, which was signed into law, which banned gender discussion topics from kindergarten to third grade. And so, what if you're a parent? I'm a parent. What age do you feel like, or what content do you feel like is appropriate then, from your perspective, for kindergarten to third grade? I don't know anybody talking about weird gender stuff at that age level. I don't know if you have that experience. My kids have both been through I have two kids that went through kindergarten, third grade. Nobody said anything weird about body parts.
Yeah, I listened to this other podcast. It's the TED Talk Kids, and I was listening to one that's discussing like what's age appropriate to talk about like sex to your kids. I can't remember its name right now, but I'll get you the link so you can put it in your show notes if you would like to. But it talks about how we often think that like if we talk about gender or we talk about sexuality or sex at a very young age, that it's breaking, like having them lose their innocence. Well, the TED Talk argues that it actually helps preserve their innocence because they don't go around wondering. So you're not like going up to them and saying, hey, like, let's talk about sex. You're 3 years old. Let's do this.
Right.
But if they ask a question like, mommy, what's a blank? And you just answer it to them factually, they're like, okay. And then they just go off and do and it preserves.
They're just wondering.
Yeah, because that's what we do as humans. We wonder, we ask questions, and that's really, and when you don't, and you get misinformation, and you get like, oh, well, I think it's this or this, it actually ruins them. It ruins their innocence. So it's better to address it as it comes. My child is too, so I haven't had those conversations, but my husband and I have spoken about what we refer to body parts, and we talk about them, and if Juniper asks, that we will be factual with it. Already I'm introducing Juniper to like text that is not so heterosexual normative, heterosexual being like the typical text, but there's so many books out there that introduces them to different lifestyles, different sexualities, different individuals that they will encounter in their life. And it's only a way to prepare them for it. Like, I just don't understand this.
Right. And I think the body conversation,
education bill,
right. And all of us should be at bare minimum talking about strangers should not touch you in certain places.
Yes.
Right. And so we're already should be having this conversation, and it can only spur other questions about, well, why are these parts quote unquote private parts, or why shouldn't they be allowed to touch them? And so body parts does become a part of it should be a part of conversation at home. As a parent, I certainly, we have had these conversations so that they alert us if something happens. Now, this is a transition to the last thing, our last little piece for today. And it has to do with the thing we worked on, speaking of body parts and identity, dress code, right?
Yeah.
And so we're in high school, right? But, the rewriting the dress code was a initiative that you brought up. Can you just kind of explain a little bit on how it became a thing that you wanted to invite the staff to review?
So, our dress code was probably created before I was born.
Yeah.
So it's, and I say that as being hyperbolic, but it was very outdated. And for my purpose, was to update the dress code, but also to include more gender neutral terms, which in and which I know when we say gender neutral, people are going to think like, oh, LGBTQ only, but that's not the case. It's just saying, instead of saying skirts, we're saying bottoms, right? Instead of saying tube tops, we're saying just tops. And so looking at that and removing some language that is meant to, control, because honestly, dress code has always been about controlling more so the
And it
female
was
body.
separated into girls
Yeah.
can't wear this and boys
Yeah.
can't wear this.
Yeah. Instead of that, it's just like,
right.
these are things that should be acceptable within the school. And then it has it so that students, if they want to, experiment with identity, that they know, okay, well, I at least need this part covered.
Right.
And that's
So
really,
a boy could wear a dress and still be in dress code as long as
as long as
it
it's
matches the dress code.
exactly. And
whereas
I think
prior to that, that would not have been.
I don't think
accepted.
it was just a very archaic dress code, I would say. But now it's more about, being, I don't even want to use the term appropriately dressed or professionally dressed, just dress
for school.
for the learning environment, dress for the learning environment.
But for so many kids, the way they dress is part of their identity.
Yeah.
And so there was a sensitivity, I think, that needed to come with that. And so you did some research, right? Were you the originator of the idea that the dress code terminology was old and outdated, or did you find that other schools were already jumping on this?
This is not new, and this is not even to our district. It's not new to our state. But it's also not new to like the US, because in Virginia, they were having students help rewrite their dress code to be a more gender neutral dress code, a fair dress code. In Northern California, there are so many districts, and even districts around here. I want to say Norco, right? Like I shouldn't be mentioning like these districts in Southern California. Right. There are so many districts that are implementing a more gender neutral dress code. And I think that's good. That's what it should be, rather than dictate like what just, a cisgender female should be wearing. It should say this needs to fit for the learning environment to all individuals, right? So that's going to be, let's see what implementation is like next year.
Yes, we'll get the kids' feedback and then we'll go from there. I mean, speaking of kids, I did talk to two of my class periods today. I asked them, guys, I'm doing this podcast episode and we're talking about the singular they and pronouns. Is this on your radar, or is this a thing that's bothering you? And so in a class of 30, just for anecdotal numbers, right? In a class of 30, I had 3 kids say that it was on their mind. I said, well, how many of your teachers, and I'm owning that I don't do this, but how many of your teachers put their pronouns in their syllabus and put it on their email signature or on the board? And out of 2 classes, which is going to be about 65, 70 kids, they said a total of 2 did that. I don't have it on my email signature, although I do know a couple of our colleagues do. This is, for me, it's a sign. But I did say, is this important to you at this time? And out of 60 kids, it was 3 or 4 that said, yeah, it's important to me. I didn't do any follow-up with that, but for some of them, I don't know that it's necessarily bothering them, but you could feel a little energy coming my way from the ones that were indicating that it was important to them. And like I said, I have been corrected when trying to add or she, talking about he or she, which I've been good at for 10 years now or longer now. I've only been teaching 20 years, but I've been good about he or she. But now I'm getting the nudge to say, or they, Mr. Silva, right? It's like, or they, you're right, 100% right. and I don't mind it. And I don't mind. And I actually think it's great that the kids feel comfortable enough to say, or don't forget
Yeah.
they, and because they know I'll say you're 100% right, or they,
Absolutely.
um, about it. So I'd love to see, I'd love to nudge more people in that direction, because like this article says, and like you've shared with me, it's not you defining yourself, although that can be the case, but it's also you inviting someone else to say, oh, you've shared your pronouns, let me share mine, right? As so that they're not feeling like they're forcing something on you, or somehow outing themselves in some way, right? By just say, hey, here's mine, and you don't have to respond with yours, but these are mine, so you feel safe. And I just want to encourage more people to rally around that. It's not about you, it's about you creating a space for somebody who may be one of those, my 2 of 60 kids, who it was a thing for them.
Yeah.
If they have 6 teachers in a day, and they have 6 teachers saying, here's mine, I mean, you're please let me know if you have a preference, and I will do my best to honor that preference, so that they can go through their day. I mean, you talked about going through schooling without feeling,
Yeah.
that acknowledged and valued. If and I don't know, the more I think about it, the more it's easy to do,
Yeah.
right? The more it takes so little effort for me to put in my email signature, put it in my syllabus, and ask people to remind people, please, if I'm getting it wrong, let me know, and correct me if I don't do it right. And
You, in the beginning of the year, do you do like, and each teacher does it differently, by like an about me
yeah,
page or something like
yeah,
that? Something easy is,
yes,
of course, just including, if you would like to share your pronouns or your
oh
words with
yeah,
me,
oh
here's
yeah,
a space. Not to force any students to do it, right? Because we want them, but providing it in your own syllabus and saying like, well, here's a space for you if you would like to, right? Because, high school, um, they students are still like exploring identity, and you know maybe that conversation, this might be the first time, like, oh whoa, like looking at this piece of paper that's saying, oh, what are your pronouns right here,
yeah,
might be the first time that anybody, hopefully not, hopefully the conversation has happened beforehand, but it might be the first time that they need to express that, and so giving them that space, whether they want to or not, that's up to them, but giving them that space in an about me page, or um, you know, I had a student, sorry to, I know we're going into final thoughts, but my experience with this student, um, he was in my freshman class, and this was me second year as a teacher. And so during a presentation, someone used the pronoun he, and I said, oh, no, 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 she did this. And the student came up to me later and said, like, Mrs. Tran, I identify as male. And I go, oh my God. And I think that that's really where it started my journey to look into it.
mhm,
I forgot about that until this very moment talking to you. And I apologize. I said, I'm so sorry. I did not mean that. And then that's when I said, when I call you girlfriend, it just means that, like, and they see, even I almost did it. He said, no, I understand. I understand. Um, and then the next year, I speak with another teacher, and the other teacher told me that the student had come up to her and he had on a piece of paper, oh, I identify as a boy, and gave it to the teacher ahead of time. And I'm like, wow, like, I hope I made that. I hope that that was a moment where we're learning, I'm learning about him. He taught me something. And then he went on and felt more comfortable with himself as a sophomore and was able to
mhm.
express openly to another teacher who he is. And so it was like, oh my God. Yeah. So it's just those little moments, it's not going to be every student,
Right.
but for the ones that need it the most, like those are the ones where you remember them and you think, oh my God, like, yeah, they just wanted to feel safe in their classroom. They wanted
And
to feel welcomed.
I would imagine that you apologizing went a long way, having an adult apologize to them, especially about something as deeply personal as identity. And they probably had reservations about saying something to you. So if they said something, it was obviously important. And so honoring that is huge. That's why you're my champion. That's why I appreciate you, and I wanted to bring you on here. So let's have, do you have anything you want to say before we wrap this up that you want people to know about whether it's about pronouns, whether it's about identity, whether it's about just relating to these kids in general? You have the mic.
I just think that, you know, the people who are listening here are the ones who are most likely already champions in their own school. And if this particular episode can help, or allow teachers to say like, hey, listen to this and see what you think about it. I would love for them to share it with somebody who might not be familiar with they, them, or might not understand it and hopefully, again, we're all ever learning. And so hopefully it provides them a space where they'll listen and then they'll do their own research and do a little bit more looking at the current, trends that are moving, because we need to use language that fit our students and that are welcoming to the population that we are, working with. And that's just what it is.
And I think I'm going to wrap it up with, for teachers out there that, don't underestimate the willingness of a colleague to be open-minded. Hang took a chance on me and noticed that I had tendencies towards social justice, but they're more in maybe the ethnicity, cultural area. They weren't necessarily in the pronoun area. But I think if they are into social justice and they have the energy and that kind of, focus and emphasis in one area, don't underestimate them in the same way that Hang didn't underestimate me. Give them a chance. Hey, you're doing great. You might want to consider, this kind of language as being important. And you might miss, but if you hit, you're gonna convert somebody to being even more effective with the kids you care about. And you just never know how powerful it is having one more person. It's not, you didn't just double. I don't think you doubled your effectiveness. It's like it was more than that. It was almost exponential. And then you can slowly kind of find other people to then say, hey, we're not trying to do anything but respect.
Yeah.
Right. And have it go both ways. I mean, how many times have teachers complained that kids are getting less respectful? Well, let's put out more respect and see what comes back. I would imagine it's respect coming back. Now, I don't know a lot of kids that meet a ton of respect with a ton of disrespect, as long as that respect is rooted in love and boundaries and clear expectations. And so something for people to consider. And so hopefully this isn't the last time you come on, but I'm grateful for you as a human, and thankful that you come on and help me learn and grow and mess up and still come back and keep trying. So thankful for you.
It's definitely not going to be the last time that I come on. And I love that you added the mess up part, because my life, I guess my catchphrase would be like, I got to get my life together, but that's the fun thing. I think it's in those mistakes, it's learning, and even like with me learning, my own life, my own existence, my own identity, and how to parent and stuff like that. I've got that. You've got two adorable, amazing little humans. I'm gonna definitely need to pick your brain on.
They had their moments.
They had their moments, but how did you help that? Because I've got a wild one coming up, and so that's Juniper is a wild one.
All right, we'll end on that. thank you so much for being here. I'm just, and for those of you listening, you understand this whole year I'm spending just asking questions and trying to understand what it means to teach for justice, and having that at the forefront, and how it can change how I approach curriculum, how I approach kids in general, how I approach my colleagues, how I approach my personal life. And hopefully this was a step in the right direction for me and for you. And like I said, I'm grateful. So thank you. I will see you tomorrow. Everyone else, I'll see you when I see you.
Bye.
Bye.